Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 7th part of What If Naruto Was Betrayed and Destroyed the Akatsuki. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Daisuke and his wife dashed out of their tent, joined by several other campers who had heard and felt the massive explosion that had shook their camp. A large plume of smoke and debris rose into the heavens several miles away, as everyone looked on in amazement. The majority of the bandits were attempting to figure out what had occurred. All except Daisuke, who was aware of what had occurred and silently mused to himself as he watched the mushroom-shaped plume rise higher and higher. Who won, Kenpachi-sama or Naruto-sama? Naruto struggled to his feet after landing on the ground and coughed up some earth and debris. He noticed the impact crater, which indicated where his Zanpakuto and Kenpachi had collided with terrifying results. The force of the impact appeared to have blown every tree, shrub, and rock formation within a half-mile radius away. That surprised me. Before the horrifying realization hit Naruto, he thought to himself. From a quarter-mile away, Nell, Hinata, and the other girls had been watching the fight. When Naruto looked over to their position, he couldn't see them because the dust was still settling over the battlefield. He immediately began running over to check on their condition and ensure they were okay. As Naruto got closer, he could hear the unmistakable sounds of two little girls crying. Naruto's heart skipped a beat when he saw Hinata lying prone over a sobbing Nell and Yachiru. Naruto could tell from Hinata's tattered clothing that she had used her body to shield the little girls from the blast. Naruto turned his attention to the Hyuga woman after kneeling down to help his surrogate daughter and Yachiru out from under Hinata. When he discovered she was only unconscious, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. Naruto searched the area for the others who had been with Nell and Hinata and asked his sniffling daughter where they were and what had happened. "I'm not sure where they are." When the big boom went off, Hina-chan started to thwirl around, and teeth thinny dome surrounded me and Yachiru-chan. Hinata used the Hyuga's Hakesho Kaden to protect them from the explosion, Naruto reflected as his daughter went on. But the boom started to break through the thinny dome, and then Hina-chan threw Herthulf over me and Yachiru-chan, and that's all I remember until you arrived. Yachiru agreed with everything the young girl next to her had said. "Is Hina-chan going to be okay?" Naruto wiped a tear from the little Arrancar's cheek and smiled before responding tenderly. "Yes, little one, I promise she'll be fine." Shunsui, Yoruichi, and Yugito returned, earning Naruto a lethal glare before spitting. "So, where were you while Hinata-chan was protecting the children?" All three of them wore a look of guilt and shame before Yoruichi meekly offered some sort of defense by saying, "When that explosion happened between you and Kenpachi, we only had a split second to react. It was simply our warrior instincts that kicked in, and we leapt or flash stepped away. We didn't intend to leave the children unprotected. That made no difference. Whether you meant to or not, the fact remains that you did. But I don't have time to talk about it with you all right now. Let us return Hinata-chan to the camp so she can rest and heal. This will be discussed further later." Naruto knelt to pick up Hinata. Behind him, a rough voice echoed. "We're not done yet, kid." Naruto turned around to see a bloodied and battered Zaraki Kenpachi barely standing with his Zanpakuto held shakily in his hand. Kenpachi was swaying and barely had the strength to hold his sword. This he said authoritatively to the injured hulk of a man. "We are Kenpachi, please stand down." Kenpachi was able to stand up straight. "I'm not going to stand down, kid, until you put me down. If that's what you want," Naruto stated before picking up his Zanpakuto and approaching him. He moved at breakneck speed. Naruto knocked Kenpachi's Zanpakuto out of his hands in an instant, then knocked the big man himself down to the turf. Naruto ordered the now defeated Crimson Blade leader to stop, raising his sword to his throat. "I have no desire to kill you, but if you force me to, I will. I would much rather have you as a living ally than a dead opponent." Kenpachi noticed a tear rolling down the face of his former Gote lieutenant. Looking back at Naruto, he sighed deeply before uttering the two words he had sworn never to say. "I submit." Naruto's self-satisfied grin was visible as he removed his mask and gave his orders seconds later. "Good. Shunsui, Yoruichi, help with Zaraki. Yugito, take care of Nel and Yachiru. We're heading back to the camp right now." Naruto then knelt again to pick up Hinata and carry her back to the bandit encampment in his arms. "Sasuke, you pompous jerk, give up already." As she watched the Uchiha dodge a torrent of flames that rushed past him, Ino screamed at him. As Ino raged, while Sasuke ignored her plea and continued to fight this old man named Yamamoto, she thought to herself, "That fucking stupid Uchiha asshole. It would serve him right to be killed by this old man, and Sasuke has only himself and his arrogant attitude to blame if that happens. We traveled all this way to track Naruto to this location, only to find this old man." She rolled her eyes as Sasuke retreated from the fire. But instead of asking nicely, Mr. Ima Uchiha demanded that this Yamamoto guy tell us where Naruto is, and when he refused, Sasuke had to go and threaten him. She was vaguely aware of Anbu flying across the room as a result of a taijutsu combo. "Next thing I know, this guy goes Super Hulk on us and starts wiping the floor with Sasuke. Hell, I can't even get close enough to use my jutsu to help the Uchiha jerk because of the heat generated by the flames surrounding this old man. I just hope this guy doesn't kill me after he's finished with Sasuke." Yamamoto watched his young opponent with onyx hair and red eyes dodge another violent stream of flame from his Zanpakuto. The former captain of the 13 court guard squads was irritated by this young man's attitude and impudence. He hadn't fought in a long time, but he was determined to teach this arrogant punk a lesson for daring to threaten him. It was then that Yamamoto noticed the young man unsheath the Zanpakuto and hold it in front of him. "That's interesting." Yamamoto recognized the blade and was curious as to where this young man had obtained it, so he paused his attacks, dispersed the flames around him, and called out to the young man. "Stay your hand, young one. If you agree, I am willing to call this fight a draw and answer your question about Naruto Uzumaki's whereabouts." His pupils constricted. "On the condition that you answer a question from me." Sasuke was simply panting and trying to catch his breath. He was exhausted from dodging one flame attack after another from this old man, and when he turned to look at Ino, he saw her furiously nodding her head up and down. Turning back to Yamamoto, he gritted his teeth in rage, almost refusing his opponent's offer, but even he could see that this battle would not end in his favor. He let out a snarl before finally responding in a labored voice. "Yes, old man, but where is Naruto now?" You answer my question first," Yamamoto said, wagging his finger at Uchiha. "Fine." Sasuke grumbled in annoyance. "Where can I find the person who gave you that Zanpakuto? Do not lie to me, because I will detect it immediately." "This blade was given to me by a man named Byakuya Kuchiki. His clan lives west of the Wind Country in Karakura, a small village to the north. As I suspected, Byakuya Kuchiki was also transported to this plane. Interesting," Yamamoto thought silently before Sasuke called out. "Okay, I answered your question. Now answer mine." Everyone in the room felt a massive chakra explosion from a long distance. Yamamoto exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. "You wanted to know where Naruto Uzumaki is, and now you know." At the same time, Two-Leaf Village Junin had just finished questioning a man in the Wave Country who had sold a katana blade to a masked indigo-haired colored girl with white eyes a few days before when they heard the explosion, and Kurenai was the first to speak. "Kakashi, did you feel it?" "I did, Kurenai. I believe we have determined our next destination." "That's not where that man said the masked girl, who I'm sure was Hinata, went." "I know, but I can only think of one person capable of such a powerful chakra explosion, Naruto. And if it was Naruto, it means Hinata is either on his way there or has already arrived." "That makes sense, so let's get started." Kakashi agreed and both Junin dashed off in search of the source of the explosion they had sensed. Sakura abruptly came to a halt in the forest and yelled for Kiba to do the same. The Inuzuka heir groused as he made his way over to his kunoichi partner and inquired angrily. "What are we doing stopping for Sakura?" "Kiba, you didn't feel that?" "What do you think?" "I'm not sure, but it felt like a huge chakra spike coming from that direction," Sakura stammered, pointing in the opposite direction they were going. "I didn't feel anything, and I'm not about to throw away the first solid lead we've had in finding Hinata on a wild goose chase," Kiba retorted angrily. "What are you talking about, solid lead?" "A drunken traveling merchant claimed to have seen a masked blue-haired girl with white eyes in Wave Country." "That's not exactly a sure thing." "That's all we've got, so that's where I'm going. You can come if you want, or you can go find whatever you were feeling on your own." "Fine, we'll go to the Wave Country," Sakura said frustratedly before continuing their journey to the Wave Country. Naruto was about to enter his tent, where Hinata had been resting since he brought her back from his fight with Zaraki, when he was stopped by Yugito, who stated in a stammering guilt-ridden voice. "I just wanted to apologize to Naruto-sama for my cowardice earlier today. I truly didn't mean to abandon the children. You have to understand, during the last 7 years of being imprisoned by the Akatsuki, I had to learn to take care of myself because no one else was going to. When that explosion occurred, I acted on the only emotional safeguard I've known for such a long time. Self-preservation, but that is no excuse for fleeing as I did." Naruto grabbed Yugito's arm and turned her around as she turned to walk away. "Yugito-chan, I don't blame you for your actions today. I understand your pain and have no resentment for what happened. The others, they are warriors, people meant to protect people, and I expected them to act as such. Don't blame or feel ashamed for yourself because I don't. Now, get some rest because tomorrow will be a long day." "Thank you very much, Naruto." Naruto reflected on the events of the day after his fight with Kenpachi as he watched his fellow Jinchuriki walk away. Naruto had spent the previous several hours familiarizing himself with his newly acquired army of men. A few of them objected to Naruto taking over as their new commander, but when Zaraki informed them that Naruto had defeated him in combat, they changed their minds. They immediately calmed down upon hearing that, because no one had ever come close to defeating their former leader in the past. Naruto appointed Zaraki as his second-in-command and established a training regiment for all the men to begin in the morning. Naruto was exhausted at the end of the day, as the entire day had been exhausting, but one look at Hinata as he entered his tent gave him renewed strength. He stripped off his mask, shirt, and pants and lay down next to Hinata, gazing at her peaceful face as she slept. Naruto admired her natural beauty as she brushed an errant strand of hair out of her face. Hinata shifted in her sleep, and the sheet covering her body had slipped below her chest, revealing a lacy lavender-colored French-cut bra that seemed to struggle to keep her ample natural gifts encased. Naruto recalled that her clothes were in shambles as a result of her efforts to protect Nel and Yachiru. Yugito must have taken them away from Hinata when she put her to bed upon their return to camp. The slightly perverted nature of Naruto reared its head as he watched Hinata's chest rise and fall in rhythmic fashion, wondering if the rest of Hinata's clothing matched the bra. Naruto's eyes widened as he lifted the sheet to see what was beneath. Yes, it does. What are you doing, Naruto-kun? Hearing Hinata's voice, Naruto dropped the sheet and sat up, his face flushed with embarrassment. Hello Hinata-chan. I'm sorry. I was just checking on you and... Hinata simply grinned at Naruto's flushed face as he stammered out an apology and explanation. It was a refreshing change of pace, as she was usually the one who became agitated around him. As she sat up, she cupped his cheek in one hand and kissed his other, much to Naruto's surprise, as she explained with a slight blush on her own face. It's fine, Naruto-kun. I don't mind if you look. When Hyuga woman exclaimed, Naruto looked sheepishly at Hinata before smiling and leaning in to kiss her. Are they okay, Nel and Yachiru? Naruto drew Hinata into a hug and whispered softly while nibbling on her earlobe. Thanks to you, Hinata-heim, they're both fine. I'm sorry you were hurt protecting them. Hinata stifled a soft moan as Naruto planted butterfly kisses along her neck and jawline and she inquired. Good, that's Naruto-kun, where are they now? Yoruichi and Shunsui are babysitting them tonight, and I made sure they got lots of treats, so they should be on a sugar high for the next few hours and keep both of them occupied for the rest of the night. Hinata was having difficulty concentrating and carrying on a coherent conversation with Naruto because he had begun to suck on the sweet spot on her neck that he was so familiar with. Hinata finally said, her voice choking. Why did you do that, Naruto-kun? Oh, yes, Naruto-kun. It was the best form of punishment I could think of for them leaving you and the kids behind when that explosion happened, Naruto replied, before planting a soft love bite on Hinata's neck and shoulder. Her reaction was rather unexpected. Yes. Hinata yelled as she leapt up, knocked Naruto over onto his back in surprise, and straddled him before furiously kissing his face. Naruto eventually collapsed on top of Hinata, breathing heavily, before rolling to the side and resting his forearm on his brow. He and Hinata were both covered in a fine sheen of sweat as Hinata snuggled into Naruto and rested her head on his heaving, well-toned chest. Naruto said in a ragged voice after gently kissing the top of her head. Hi Hinata-chan, that was amazing. Hinata exclaimed, finishing his sentence. Naruto laughed. It was, yeah. Can I ask you a question, Naruto-kun? What exactly is it, Hinata-chan? When you're ready, I'd like to return. Naruto's eyes widened as he felt Hinata's hand move down his body and reflected. Oh, Cam. As Naruto and Hinata entered the main tent to have breakfast with Zaraki and the others the next day, both of them sat down with smiles on their faces. Naruto looked around and noticed Shunsui and Yoruichi had fallen asleep at the table. Both Nel and Yachiru had apparently done their part in keeping his companions awake at night. As Nel and Yachiru came in from playing outside and sat down to eat, Naruto chuckled to himself. Yachiru sat next to Zaraki, while Nel sat between Naruto and Hinata, receiving a kiss on the cheek from both of them. The little Arrancar then sniffed the air around them and commented to her surrogate father. You smell like Hina-chan, Naru-kun. Nel sniffed again and turned to Hinata, saying. How come you smell like Naru-chan, Hina-chan? Hinata blushed beet red with embarrassment, while Zaraki spit out his drink with glee. Naruto only grumbled after pinching the bridge of his nose. Eat your breakfast, Nel-chan. There had to be a reaction to Nel's innocent question. And there was a reaction. Yugito, who sat across from Naruto and Hinata at the large banquet table, had been staring at the couple since they walked into the tent. The Nibi Jinchuriki had noticed Hinata's new posture. She was practically glowing, not to mention her warm smile and the way she was practically nestled into Naruto, his arm draped around her shoulders, drawing her close. But it wasn't until she heard Nell's questions that she realized why. "You should have claimed that delicious blonde hunk of man meat when I told you to kitten," Nibby purred inside Yugito's head. "Would you please stop talking?" Yugito snapped silently at her tenant. "It appears I've struck a nerve." "You're wrong. I don't care if Naruto and Hinata have." Yugito stammered in her head, trying but failing to find the words she wanted to say. As a slew of emotions flooded her mind, the former Cloud Kunoichi bolted upright from her seat at the table and rushed out of the tent before anyone could stop her. Naruto winced as he noticed Yugito's eyes widen in realization, and he knew she'd figured it out because of the confused and hurt expression on her face when she left. Hinata squeezed his hand gently and whispered, "I'll speak with her, Naruto-kun." "So, you two were knocking boots last night?" Yoruichi remarked, slightly envious, having awoken just in time to hear Nell's questions and see Yugito's response. "Naru-kun, what doth knocking booth mean?" Nell inquired innocently, adding to the confusion. Naruto and Hinata both flushed cherry red before the blonde Jinchuriki pinched his nose, looked away, and said, "I'll tell you when you're older." "Much older," Naruto grumbled. Kenpachi spit out his drink and burst out laughing for the second time that morning. "What the hell is going on here?" muttered one of the lower, more unassuming bandits as Naruto finally made his grand entrance from the main tent, officially establishing him as the new leader of the Crimson Blade Bandits. Naruto, on the other hand, did not appear pleased. When you factor in the effect of his skull mask, you have a rather terrifying figure standing before the bandits. Kenpachi stood to his left, his arms crossed and a disinterested expression on his face. Yachiru, of course, was perched on his shoulder, happily smiling. Shunsui, to Naruto's right, seemed uninterested as well, judging by the yawn he let out. However, none of this was noticed because every single bandit's attention was solely on Naruto. "Why does he look like he's about to kill all of us?" muttered one bandit to his companion. With the exception of Daisuke, Yumachika, and Akaku, if looks could kill, the lot of them would have died by now, so lethal was Naruto's glare. One of them tried to flee, but Akaku dragged him back by the collar. Before his metallic echo of a voice spoke, Naruto allowed a feral grin to creep up on his face inside his mask. "Hello maggots, I'm so glad you're all here." As he stepped further out from the tent, a few of the bandits gulped nervously. "Zaraki might not have explained why I came here." When his ears were met with nothing but a tense silence, Naruto arched an eyebrow and added, "Anyone interested? I guarantee it won't be boring." A few of the bandits in front grumbled affirmatively, and the Jinchuriki had outlined his plan to them in 5 minutes. Needless to say, his reaction was mixed. Some of the more powerful bandits, such as Daisuke, appeared interested but skeptical, while the weaker members appeared terrified. "I cannot guarantee victory, but I can guarantee fame, glory, and, most importantly, money." When the last part of Naruto's statement was heard, the crowd of bandits let out an excited murmur. Unsheathing Zangetsu, Naruto held it aloft, its silvery tip gleaming in the early morning sun's orange and red light. "I can promise you that if you survive the hellish weeks of training that I have in store for you, you'll become stronger than you've ever dreamed possible," Naruto said as he held the gleaming blade aloft. "And I promise you, this will be the battle of the century, one that will not be forgotten, no matter how many years pass." Everyone was so engrossed in his speech that their faces, not to mention their hearts, dropped when he said what he said next. However, Naruto scowled and declared as he lowered Zangetsu and pointed it at the men in front of him. "If any of you have doubts, if any of you want to leave, now is the time," Naruto said ominously, addressing the entire group. "Because I will not tolerate cowardice or deserters in my ranks, do you understand?" A tense silence gripped the bandits once more, but Kenpachi yanked his Zanpakuto from its sheath with nothing but his thumb and growled. Those who would have fled under normal circumstances decided to stay, lest they be slain where they stood, as the memory of their former leader was still fresh in their minds. But one man mustered the courage to walk away, followed by two more, all the while nervously looking over their shoulders to see if Kenpachi would pursue them. Zaraki was about to cut them down when Naruto shook his head, and the former Gote 13 captain resisted. Last chance, Naruto said, his gaze traveling over the ragtag group of bandits, the majority of whom were still present out of fear, overconfidence, or plain greed. After this, if I catch any of you trying to jump ship, which I am confident I will, you will discover that death is the least of your concerns. Everyone went white as a sheet, but there was only one man left. The rest stayed where they were, firmly planted. Naru's pretty scary, he reminds me of you, Kenny, Yachiru observed as she swung her legs from her usual perch. Alright, your training begins right now. Let's go. Naruto said authoritatively as the remaining Crimson Blade bandits began shuffling out. As they followed Naruto, they were all silently wondering what their new leader had in store for them. If only they had known. Tsunade sat at her desk, staring at the mountain of paperwork piled on top of her, but she had no desire to work on any of it. She looked at the clock and saw that she still had a few hours before the sunset on another miserable day. With the passing of another day, Tsunade was reminded that the time limit she had given Sasuke to bring Naruto back to the village had long passed. The blonde Hokage had not heard from Sasuke or Kakashi, and she now knew that two of her strongest shinobi were looking to kill her surrogate little brother rather than retrieve him. The fact that they were now doing this on her orders as Hokage made the situation unbearable for Tsunade. Tsunade began to cry at the mere thought of this, and then she heard some yelling outside her office. A moment later, her office doors flew open, letting in the heads of two of Konoha's most powerful clans, Hiashi Hyuga and Sume Inuzuka. Tsunade quickly wiped away her tears before standing up and slamming her hands down on her desk, causing the entire room to violently shake before shouting angrily. What does this mean? Please excuse this intrusion, Hokage-sama, but I and this old Hyuga fool have an urgent matter to discuss with you, Sume Inuzuka stated politely while bowing. Watch your mouth, mangy old bitch, before I put you down. Hiashi sneered as Sume growled at him in retaliation for his insult. Enough, both of you. Unless you need my attention, you two can take your little fight out of my office and away from me. Tsunade yelled angrily. I apologize to you, Hokage-sama, but we have a matter that needs your attention. I formally request that the marriage of my daughter Hinata and her husband Kiba Inuzuka be declared null and void. Tsunade's interest was piqued as she sat in her chair after hearing this. Hiashi was the one who pushed for the clan marriage 3 years ago, but now he wants it annulled, as if it never happened. Tsunade was eager to learn what had caused the Hyuga patriarch's shift in attitude, but she asked them to take a seat first. On what grounds do you want Haishi's marriage annulled? Quite simply, Hokage-sama, the Inuzuka whelp marriage has produced no heirs, and the Inuzuka clan has been quite obstinate in their defiance of proposals put forth by the Hyuga clan within the Konoha Council. Ah, there it is, the true reason Hiashi wishes to sever ties with the Inuzuka clan. I'm sure he assumed that with Hinata and Kiba's marriage, Sume and her clan would align with what the Hyuga clan wants in the council. You silly old fool. Did you really think Sume would give in to your political ambitions just because your daughter married her son? And to think you purposefully ruined your own daughter's happiness in order to increase your power within the village. Hiashi Hyuga, you truly are one of the cruelest bastards I've ever met, and I hope Kami has a special place in hell reserved for you when you die. Tsunade thought to herself as she looked at the Hyuga male with disgust before turning her attention to Sume and asking. What are your thoughts on this, Sume? I have no objections to annulling my son's marriage to that Hyuga harlot. She has caused him nothing but heartache by fleeing to chase after that loathsome adulterous Uzumaki brat." Sume scoffed. Tsunade's rage boiled over in response to what Sume had just said. "Not only about Naruto, but also about Hinata," she said with gritted teeth. "Sume, you're an old friend of mine, and I'll give you a pass because what you just said was prompted by your grief over what happened to Kiba. But if I ever hear you speak about Naruto or Hinata like that again, you'll be leaving this office on a stretcher." "Then why did she flee after him, Hokage-sama, if he's done nothing wrong?" Sume retorted angrily. "Because Hinata loves Naruto, not your son. I know it's difficult for you to hear, but it's the truth. And don't pretend you were unaware of this, Sume or Hiyashi. You both knew who Hinata's heart belonged to before you forced this arranged marriage down her throat." "Yes, I knew," Sume replied quietly. "Yet you still let this power-hungry bastard sitting next to you talk you into marrying despite knowing it would destroy both Hinata and Naruto. Why, Sume? Why did you do that?" "Now look here." Hiyashi objected to being insulted. "Shut up, Hiyashi, I'll get back to you in a minute. Right now, I'm speaking to Sume, and if you want me to annul this marriage, you'll sit there and keep your mouth shut." "Shut up, Hiyashi, I'll get back to you in a moment. I did it because I love my son and he was so desperately in love with the girl that I just wanted to see him happy. I like Hinata and know she has remained faithful to Kiba throughout their marriage. And I know Naruto has always been a loyal friend to my son and would never betray him in any way. I apologize for what I said about them. I'm sorry for the pain you and your son are experiencing right now, Sume, but you and your son need to realize that Hinata doesn't love Kiba, at least not in the way you both want her to. She will always love Kiba as a close friend and comrade, but Hinata has and will always be in love with Naruto, and there is nothing you or anyone can do to change that. I know, Tsunade, I just hoped that one day Hinata would learn to love Kiba the way he loved her, which is why I agreed to the marriage." Sume replied, her voice tinged with regret. "Hinata tried. She tried for over 3 years to be a good wife to your son, which wasn't easy given how Kiba treated Hinata like a possession or a trophy rather than a wife. I know she did, Tsunade, and I know my son could have been a much better husband in how he treated her. I thought Kiba would eventually realize how he was acting, and maybe he would have. But I guess Hinata had finally reached her limit with him," Sume sighed. "So, Sume, what exactly is the problem if you agree to this annulment with Hiyashi?" "The problem is that this Hyuga asshole wants my clan to pay him compensation for the nullification of the marriage," exclaimed the Inuzuka clan leader, glaring at her fellow clan leader. "I see nothing wrong with that, considering my daughter spent 3 unproductive and unappreciated years married to her whelp, as you two just finished discussing, and since he failed to produce any type of heir for either clan, monetary reparation for my clan is not unreasonable," Hiyashi stated coldly. "Why, you smug, arrogant bastard. How dare you blame their lack of children solely on my son?" screamed an enraged Sume. "Well, you can't blame my daughter. Hyuga women have always been very fertile, so if your mongrel of a son had done his job properly, they would have had at least 1, if not more children by now." Tsunade had to step in between Sume and Hiyashi as they both leapt up from their chairs before a full-fledged brawl broke out and shouted at the 2 clan leaders. "Both of you either calm down and act like adults right now, or I'll throw you into separate Anbu jail cells until you cool down. Now the 2 of you sit back down and be quiet while I make my ruling, which, as I remind you, will be the final say on this matter." Tsunade cleared her throat and said as both clan heads sat back down, looking at each other. "Ahem, Hiyashi, is it your clan that is requesting that Hinata and Kiba's marriage be annulled?" "You are correct, Hokage-sama." "And you, Sume, do you agree to Haishi's annulment of your son's marriage?" I do, Lady Tsunade. Very well, then I agree that compensation is in order before I annul this marriage. But, Lady Tsunade, you can't mean. Sume stammered, before Tsunade held up her hand to silence the woman, while Hiyashi smirked. Yes, Sume. Hiyashi Hyuga, because you are the active party wishing to dissolve this marriage, your clan will pay the Inuzuka clan $1 million ryos for each year of Hinata's marriage to Kiba, for a total of $3 million ryos over a 3-year period. After hearing this, Haishi's smirk vanished. He stammered as he jumped up from his chair, his face flushed with rage. That is absurd. The Hyuga clan refuses to pay anything to the Inuzukas in this matter. The Hyuga clan is the injured party here, not them. Shut the hell up, Hiyashi. Neither you nor your clan are an injured party in this matter. The only injured parties are those 2 kids whose marriage is now voiding, and since you and your clan are the ones wanting this annulment, then your clan is the one who will pay to make it happen. Tsunade retorted to the enraged Hyuga leader. HMPH, I'd rather take an heir from the Uzumaki brat than have anything to do with this wretched canine clan ever again. Well, there is another option, I suppose, but I'm not sure you'd agree to it. Because of the great love you have for your daughter, Tsunade concluded sarcastically. What is the other option, Hokage-sama? It's really quite simple, Hiyashi. If you banish your daughter from the Hyuga clan and renounce any rights or claims you have on her, this becomes nothing more than a normal ending of a simple marriage, as opposed to the nullification of a politically arranged marriage between 2 prominent clan heirs. If you do this, Hinata will now become a mere Konoha citizen, and no compensation will be required to either clan to effect the annulment of the marriage. I agree to those terms, Hiyashi said quickly, interrupting Tsunade. Tsunade looked up, surprised that Hiyashi had agreed to expel his own daughter from the Hyuga clan so quickly. She looked at him with renewed disgust before asking, contempt in her voice. Hiyashi Hyuga, is it your position that you relinquish all rights and obligations to your daughter Hinata and she now becomes an ordinary village citizen? If so, you must sign a parental clan release form Hiyashi authorizing this legally. Fine, whatever, I couldn't care less. Hinata is no longer useful to the clan, not after serving as a rutting post for the Inuzuka mongrel for the last 3 years, and no decent clan of any of the elemental nations will want her now that she's damaged goods. I wash my hands of her, and she can live on the streets for all I care, Hiyashi sneers. Your concern for your daughter's future well-being is touching, Hiyashi. Sign at the bottom if you would, Tsunade jokes as she hands Hiyashi the form. Hiyashi returns the document to the Hokage after signing it, absolving him of any rights or claims to Hinata. Tsunade examines the document for a moment, a sad smile on her face as she affixes the Hokage's stamp of approval to it, before returning her gaze to Hiyashi and saying, "Alright, Hiyashi, it's official now. Hinata Hyuga is now a normal ordinary citizen of Konoha and, by your order, no longer has any ties to the Hyuga clan. As such, I will grant the annulment of her marriage and no compensation will be levied against your clan. If you have nothing else to discuss with me, you can leave, as I find the mere sight of you revolting to look at right now." As if I care, Hokage-sama, Hiyashi sneered as he stormed out of the office. After the door slammed behind the insulted Hyuga patriarch, a stunned Sume turned to face the blonde Hokage, puzzled. "What in the name of Kami did you do for Tsunade?" "What have I done, Sume?" "You just left Hinata without a home if she returns to the village. I may not be happy with the girl because of what happened between her and my son, but I don't want to see her homeless and out on the streets. Oh, please, Hinata is well loved by many people, particularly her friends, and it's not like she'd ever have to worry about not having a roof over her head. However, that doesn't explain why you had Hiyashi exile his own daughter. I didn't make Hiyashi do anything. He made that decision on his own. I just gave him the option. He didn't have to use it if he didn't want to. But. I did it because I owed the girl, Sume explained. 3 years ago, Hinata came to me terrified and begging for my help to stop or escape her arranged marriage to Kiba. Oh, I see, Sume replied quietly. No, you don't see. It wasn't the prospect of being married to your son that terrified her. Hinata truly cares about and loves your son, but not in the way you and Kiba wanted her to. No, what terrified Hinata was the fear of losing Naruto forever because of the marriage. There was a few minutes of silence before Sume spoke up again and asked. You say Hinata was afraid of losing Naruto because of her marriage to my son. I don't understand. If she loved the Uzumaki boy that much, she could have secretly continued to see him even after she married Kiba. Why did she have such a fear that her marriage would cause her to lose Naruto forever? Because Sume, both Hinata and Naruto have something that unfortunately many people lack within them, a sense of honor. Once she was officially married to your son, both she and Naruto would have nothing to do with each other again, and the thought of what you just suggested would never have occurred to them, as they would never dishonor themselves, the marriage, or hurt your son by committing such a betrayal. Sume nodded her head in agreement before Tsunade continued. So I did nothing to help Hinata back then, and by doing so, I helped to destroy not only her happiness, but also the happiness of my little Otito-san. Hinata was right, of course. Once she was married, Naruto respectfully bowed out of her life. I'd held out hope in the beginning that the Yamanaka girl would be able to help him overcome his grief over losing Hinata, and after a year it seemed like she had. Sume nodded her head again in agreement before Tsunade said. I don't have the opportunity anymore with Naruto to try and make amends for what I did, but as for Hinata, if she does return to the village, at least I've given her the opportunity to live her life free from Haishi's oppressive control, which is why I brought up the banishment option to her father. It doesn't make up for not helping Hinata 3 years ago, but it's a start. Sume lamentably commented after the room fell silent once more. As much as I dislike agreeing with Hiyashi, I wish Kiba and Hinata had blessed us with a grandson and heir to my clan. Tsunade, the Inuzuka clan matriarch, cocked an eyebrow before scoffing in disbelief and saying. Oh, don't give me that crap, Sume. I know of at least 2 civilian girls in the last 3 years who have given you a grandchild as a result of your sons' indiscretions, shall we say, and you are aware of them as well. Sume turned her head away in shame, then returned with tears in her eyes and replied sadly. Yes, Tsunade, I'm aware of them, and there are 3, not 2. Then you have your clan heirs, quite a few of them. However, none of them are from a shinobi clan and are simply civilians, as Inuzuka tradition requires that any heir to the clan be the result of a union of 2 shinobi clans. Oh screw tradition, it's an archaic law that serves no purpose anymore, and you mean to tell me that because of tradition, you're going to force these 3 civilian girls to raise their children alone and without any help or recognition from the Inuzuka clan? Oh screw tradition, it's an archaic law that serves no purpose anymore, and you mean to tell me that because of tradition, you're going to force these 3 civilian girls to raise their children alone and without any help or recognition from the inn? Sume's face flushed with rage at what Tsunade had just said, then vanished as the Inuzuka clan leader realized the blonde Hokage was correct. Sume got up slowly and made her way to the door before turning around and saying. Thank you, Lady Tsunade. I've learned a lot today and you've given me a lot to think about. However, before she left, Sume returned to Tsunade and expressed her sadness. I'll admit, when I first found out Hinata had left my son to go chase after the Uzumaki boy, I was very upset and hated and cursed both of them. I thought they had planned everything in advance and had betrayed Kiba most heinously, but now I know that is not the case. I can't say I'm ready to forgive Hinata for hurting Kiba, but at least I now understand her motivations behind her actions and know that even you as well, Sume Inuzuka, Tsunade said, watching the clan leader leave her office. As she approached Yugito's tent, Hinata took a deep breath to calm herself. The young Hyuga girl wasn't sure what she wanted to say to her newfound friend and companion, but she knew she had to say something, so she tentatively called out. "May I come in and speak with you, Yugito-chan?" I really don't feel like talking to anyone right now," the Nibi vessel replied, her voice choked. Hinata entered the tent anyway, refusing to accept no for an answer, and said, "I really think we should talk about me and Naruto-kun to try and explain," Hinata said nervously as she sat down across from Yugito on the ground. "What about him?" Yugito retorted bitterly before proceeding. "There's nothing to explain. I should have guessed Naruto would be with you, Hinata. You were his first true love. I was a fool to think Naruto might care about me after learning what I'd gone through at the hands of the Akatsuki. I'm nothing but trash in his eyes in comparison to a princess like you." A resounding smack echoed through the air as Yugito pressed her hand to her left cheek, her ears cringing as a furious Hinata yelled at her. "Look, Yugito-chan, I know you're hurt right now, but that doesn't give you the right to tell such lies about Naruto-kun. If he says he cares about you, you should know he does." Hinata spoke again after a brief pause, as the tension subsided. "I'm sorry for hitting you, but I was enraged after hearing you insult Naruto-kun." "It's okay, Hinata. I guess I deserved it. I'm sorry for my reaction this morning. I was just caught off guard. I mean, you and I had talked before, and you said you didn't mind sharing Naruto-kun with someone else, if he truly loved that person as well. I guess I thought you had betrayed me, just like everyone else, and taken Naruto-kun for yourself. I would never do that to you. What happened last night wasn't planned on either my or Naru's part. Kun's, it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. Can I ask you a question, Yugito-chan?" Yugito responded with a nod of her head. "Are you a fan of Naruto-kun?" The former Cloud Kunoichi exhaled a heavy sigh, hoping Hinata wouldn't ask her that question, because she honestly didn't know the answer. "I don't know, I think I love him, but I'm not even sure what love is anymore. I know I feel a sense of kinship with him as a fellow Jinchuriki, and I know I feel safe and protected when I'm around him since he rescued me from the Akatsuki and saved my life, but is that love or just gratitude? Have you expressed your feelings to Naruto-kun?" "Hi, I did, and Naruto-kun gave me hope when he said that if I just give him some time, he might grow to love me as much as he loves you. Then don't worry, just give him time, and I promise you and he can share the same life that I hope to share with him and you as well, Yugito-chan." "Thank you, Hinata-chan," Yugito said before the two women hugged. "Hinata-chan, may I ask you a question?" "Of course," she says. "Can you tell me about your and Naruto childhood Kun's in Leaf Village?" Hinata took a moment to consider Yugito's request before responding. "It's a long story, but we have time, so where do I start?" "How about the first time you saw Naruto-kun?" Hinata nodded, and the two women began chatting for the next several hours. Ino could still detect ominous traces of tainted chakra in the air from the day before. She had felt this evil energy at least once in her life. Kyuubi. As she and Sasuke accelerated, they followed the distant malignant energy that appeared to be blazing a trail that they hoped would lead them to Naruto. The noxious energy permeated the air with every turn they took and every tree they leapt from, to the point where a lesser shinobi would have vomited. Then, all of a sudden, it vanished. It left a sense of tranquility in its wake. Then it appeared. Ino could feel Naruto's distinct chakra signature even though he was far away, somewhere over the distant horizon. It might take at least a couple of days of traveling to catch up with Naruto, or so she hoped. Yet, Ino was terrified of what Naruto's reaction would be if she saw her again, and now she was having second thoughts. No, she told herself mentally. Ino was adamant that pursuing Naruto was the right thing to do, but she was terrified. Sasuke noticed this and came to a halt to avoid outdistancing himself. "Are you all right, Ino?" She shook her head, first slowly, then frantically, as if afraid to take another step. Her breathing rate increased, almost to the point of hyperventilation. Her eyes were wide open and brimming with tears. Panic struck Ino at once, angst gripping her soul with fear. "No, I'm not." When Ino grabbed Sasuke by the shoulders and shook him roughly, he let out a small gasp. "Don't you understand? We haven't spoken in 2 years. What if he still hates me?" Sasuke was rendered speechless. He eventually managed to wiggle free of her grasp. "You adore him, don't you?" Ino gave a solemn nod before nervously looking to the ground as she remembered Naruto. Sasuke sighed, realizing that his traveling companion needed to pause and try to assuage her fears of seeing Naruto. Looking over at the setting sun, Sasuke decided now was a good time to stop and set up camp for the night. He and Ino had worked hard all day to catch up to Naruto, and they were both exhausted from the effort. Sasuke realized quietly that Ino wasn't the only one concerned about what a reunion with Naruto might entail. Sasuke was aware that the time limit set by Tsunade had expired. And if he saw Naruto again, he was to kill him right away if he followed his Hokage's orders. The mere thought of having to do that made Sasuke cringe. So any delay in finding Naruto was actually welcomed by the Uchiha at this point, as he still had no idea what he would do once he and Ino found Naruto. Sasuke turned to face his Anbu companion and stated, "Let's set up camp here and try to get some rest. We'll probably catch up with Naruto in a day or two, so there's no reason for us to rush in finding him. After a good night's rest, we'll start again in the morning." Ino raised her head from the ground and smiled briefly before nodding her head in approval as she and Sasuke began to unpack their belongings and prepare for the night's stay. Kurenai and Kakashi sat in silence around a small campfire late at night. Throughout the day, the Konoha Junins had said very little. Since the unfortunate incident in the sleeping bag, things had been tense between the two of them. And they both felt foolish for inadvertently causing a change in their relationship. To be honest, the two were bothered by more than just the incident. It was the fact that both of them were grappling with new feelings they had developed for the other person in their minds. And, while they both struggled silently with these new emotions, neither was ready to admit to the other or even to themselves that these new emotions existed. Kakashi was the one who finally broke the silence and announced, "Well, if Naruto's position doesn't change, we might be able to reach him in a day or two. We should leave as soon as possible tomorrow, so I'm going to get some sleep, Kurenai." Night, Kakashi. A cold, stiff wind blew through their encampment as Kurenai watched Kakashi settle into his sleeping bag, making the red-eyed Junin shiver. Kurenai cursed inwardly as she remembered she still didn't have her own sleeping bag. She shivered once more as another gust of wind blew through the camp. Kurenai begrudgingly realized what she had to do, exhaling a heavy sigh and calling out softly, "Kakashi, have you fallen asleep yet?" As he answered, Kakashi rolled over to face his traveling companion and noticed her shivering. "No, as you can see, I'm still awake. I'm sorry to bother you, but may I borrow your sleeping bag again this evening?" Before asking, Kakashi cocked his visible brow in curiosity. "I'm not sure, are you going to hit me again when you wake up in the morning?" "No, I'm not going to hit you again," Kurenai exclaimed angrily. "Are you sure you won't hit me even if it happens again?" Kakashi asked, a quick downward glance indicating what he was talking about. Kurenai blushed as the memory of that flashed through her mind before she stammered softly. "No," Kakashi, I swear I won't hit you again even if it happens again. Kakashi paused for a moment to consider the situation before noticing Kurenai shivering again in the face of a harsh cold wind gust. He then reached over and opened the flap to his sleeping bag, silently inviting Kurenai to share his sleeping bag once more. Kurenai crawled into the sleeping bag without hesitation this time and snuggled up against Kakashi, tentatively wrapping his arms around her to warm her up. As she settled in, she raised her eyes to his and said sternly, "Now you remember having no fun. No funny stuff, yeah, I got it, Kurenai." Kakashi replied, his voice tinged with annoyance. Before he and his traveling companion dozed off in the soft glow of their dying campfire, Kurenai felt his lips gently brush against hers as he probed her warm mouth with his moist, soft tongue. As she kissed back deeply and lovingly, she could feel a sense of joy growing in her once lonely soul. Kurenai felt his arms wrap around her aching, cold body, warming it up and making her feel safe and loved. It felt so good to be in his welcoming arms, and she felt so content at the time. Kurenai felt his lips place gentle feather-like kisses on her neck as she arched her head back to expose more of her neck to him when they finally parted. Kurenai let out a small moan of pleasure as he licked and nibbled at her neck, and she felt his gentle, wet, and hot kisses trail down from her ear to her collarbone. Kurenai reached out to run her fingers through his soft, touchable hair while rubbing the back of his neck as he continued to kiss her neck. Soon after, she felt his hand softly cup her breast, followed by a thumb flick across her left nipple through her wrappings, as he fondled her breasts. Kurenai could feel an intense pleasure rising from within her, and her nipples hardening under his soothing touch, driving her insane with desire. Kurenai's lips crashed down on his once more, reaching out and pulling his head back up. Kurenai couldn't help but feel her body come alive as she savored the taste and feel of his lips on hers as their lips and tongues played a gentle game of tag. Kurenai's heart seemed to swell with love as she kissed him passionately while pulling him closer to her. The would-be lovers then moaned the other's name in blissful unison. Kurenai. Kakashi. At that moment, two sets of eyes awoke from their slumber, each Junin staring at the other with shock and awe. They were both unable to speak because their tongues were in the other's mouth at the time. Kurenai broke their embrace and frantically scrambled out of the sleeping bag after a brief moment. Kakashi sat up quickly as he and Kurenai stared silently at each other in awe. Kurenai turned on her heels and ran out of the encampment, leaving them all speechless. "Kurenai, please wait, I'm sorry," Kakashi finally managed to say to the fleeing kunoichi. Kurenai had left before he could finish his apology, so the last part of it seemed to die on the wind. Kakashi's head hung low in both anger and despair as he pulled his mask back up. He was angry at himself for breaking his promise to Kurenai, even if he hadn't done so consciously. And the despair that he had inadvertently hurt her and possibly ruined their friendship forever. The masked Junin berated himself silently for what had happened. "What's the matter with you, Kakashi? How could you possibly have done that? To Kurenai? And, perhaps more importantly, why did I do it? Was I hallucinating? What was I thinking? Is it possible that I'm developing feelings for Kurenai? I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. She clearly has no feelings for me, based on the expression on her face. I need to find her and apologize to her. I'm hoping she doesn't kill me." Kakashi then donned his Junin vest and set out to find his kunoichi comrade. Meanwhile, Kurenai had finally stopped running and sat down on an old log by a lake half a mile away. A slew of thoughts raced through her mind as she tried to catch her breath, similar to her fellow silver-haired Junin. "What the hell is wrong with you, Kurenai? What have I done, Kami? What could you possibly have done to Kakashi? I thought I was having a nightmare. I still can't believe it happened. Is it possible that I'm developing feelings for that one-eyed pervert? I believe I am, but based on the expression on his face, I doubt he has feelings for me. But I'll never forget the feeling of his arms around me in that kiss. The scent of Kurenai's arousal then wafted up to her nose, causing the Junin kunoichi to blush furiously before she said to herself, "Oh, Kami, I really need to cool down right now." Kurenai quickly stripped off her clothes and jumped into the cool, refreshing waters of the lake. Kurenai took a deep breath and dove deep under the water to try to lower her body temperature and wash away the smell of her excitement. As luck would have it, Kakashi emerged from the forest by the lake a few seconds later and looked around. "I don't understand, her trail led to here, but I don't see Kurenai anywhere," Kakashi thought to himself as he approached the lake's edge. Kurenai emerged from the water at that precise moment, her long dark brown hair falling in front of her face as she walked towards the shore. A quick flip of her head sent the locks covering her face cascading behind her in a spray of water before she stopped walking and found herself face to face with a stunned Kakashi only a few feet away. Kurenai stood in front of Kakashi in the water, gazing at her angelic face, her deep crimson-colored eyes a stark contrast to her alabaster white cream-like skin. Kurenai's wet long dark brunette hair framed her stunning face like a dark silk curtain. Kakashi's breath was nearly taken away by the sensual curve and beauty of her neck and chest, as well as her full breasts that were firm and thrust out proudly before him, with her profound dark nipples and areoles still dripping with water. The silver-haired Junin took notice of Kurenai's slender arms and lean flat stomach before his gaze was drawn to her slim feminine hips and the patch of dark hair between her thighs encased within her long supple legs. Never before had Kakashi seen a more beautiful goddess before him than he did at that moment, before his eyes rolled to the back of his head and he passed out. Kurenai rushed out of the water, forgetting her embarrassment, when she saw Kakashi fall to check on his condition. Kurenai recognized Kakashi had fainted and was not seriously hurt after a quick check, thanks to her time with Hinata. Kurenai began to dress while thinking to herself, leaning her Junin partner against the log. "I can't believe he saw me naked. I'm mortified. I'm going to kill him when he wakes up for spying on me. But I don't know why he fainted when he saw me like that, but I find that kind of strange." Sweet. Naruto's face was concerned as he watched Kenpachi put the Crimson Blade bandits through their morning training routine. Shunsui seemed to sense this and approached Naruto before asking, "What exactly is bothering you? Is it that obvious?" he asked, sighing. "It is to me." He realized there was no point in remaining silent any longer and decided to express his concerns. "I'm troubled because I've realized something. Tell me, what do you think of the men after training? They do have potential, but their combat skills are woefully lacking. If they were to face an enemy with combat experience or training, they would almost certainly lose." As he listened, Naruto couldn't help but shake his head. With the proper guidance, they can become an efficient fighting force in time, but right now, if we sent them against the Akatsuki, they would be nothing more than a minor nuisance to them before they were killed. "I agree with you, and that's what worries me. I'm afraid we won't have enough time to properly train all of these men before we're forced to face the Akatsuki in the Spring Country. They know I'm coming, so they'll wait a little longer, but they won't wait forever, and I know we won't have enough time to train the men to combat them, and right now, just about everyone I see out there will just be leading to their deaths." His words had taken on a bitter tone at this point, as he reflected to himself with regret. "They may be bandits fighting only for money, but I'd like to give them a fighting chance of surviving this battle." Shunsui interjected, "I think I might have a solution to this." Naruto raised a brow and said, "If you do, please let me know because I'm all ears." "Yoruichi," Shunsui replied hesitantly, knowing this was a sensitive subject. "Oh Kami, how can that woman help this problem?" groaned Naruto. "Well, Yoruichi knows of a place, a separate realm actually, where time flows at a different rate than what we experience in this realm, and she once trained a student there by the name of Ichigo there, where he achieved a remarkable increase in power and skill in only 3 days. Yoruichi, Kenpachi, and I could take the men into this other realm and train them to the point where they can be an effective fighting force to use against the Akatsuki and not. How long would it take you in this other realm to complete this?" "It'll be 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Muttered Naruto to himself before asking. "And how long is the time difference between that realm and ours?" 2 weeks of hard training in that realm would be equivalent to about 6 months of hard training in this realm, Shunsui said solemnly. Naruto was surprised by the answer, but he couldn't deny that it was the solution to the time versus training dilemma, as he had suspected. "Good, and I need to achieve Bankai during that time, and pretty soon. I'm not going to win like this. Talk to Yoruichi and make whatever preparations you need to Shunsui to do this, but first, we'll talk to Kenpachi about the logistics of doing this, because I don't want to take all the men and leave the encampment unprotected and vulnerable to attack while they're gone." "As you wish," Shunsui said politely before departing to find the Neko woman. As Naruto watched Shunsui walk away, he reflected on the upcoming battle against the Akatsuki and Shunsui's suggestion to help get his small army ready for that battle, and he felt renewed hope and confidence. Perhaps we'll have a chance to win this fight after all. Sakura was becoming increasingly frustrated as she sat in Tezuna's palatial home with his daughter Tsunami and grandson Inari. She desperately wanted to continue her search for Naruto, but she was stuck and knew it. Sakura and Kiba had arrived in the Wave Country a few days before to investigate a tip about Hinata. Unfortunately, Akamaru had paid a high price for their journey. A poisonous snake had slithered into their camp the night before their arrival. However, before it could harm Kiba or Sakura, Akamaru attacked and killed the serpent, but not before the canine was bitten by a venomous snake. Sakura had saved the dog's life by applying some of the medical knowledge she had learned from Tsunade over the years. He was not, however, completely healed and would not recover without the assistance of a veterinarian. So, in addition to Akamaru's continued medical care, Sakura and Kiba had discovered their dire lack of funds to restock their supplies and continue on their quest to find both Hinata and Naruto. Kiba had wired his mother Sume for assistance with Akamaru and money, but he and Sakura were without food or shelter until it arrived. Fortunately for them, Tezuna had been gracious enough to shelter and feed them for the last 3 days as a thank you for Sakura and the rest of Team No. 7's assistance in defeating Gato the Crime Lord and liberating their village from his tyranny several years ago. "Would you like some tea, Sakura-chan?" Tsunami asked, entering the living room with a tray containing a kettle and cups. "Please and thank you, Tsunami-san." Tsunami looked over at the pink-haired girl sitting in her living room as she poured the tea. Naruto had been tight-lipped when he had recently visited them. Only her father seemed to understand why Naruto had appeared. But he refused to tell her or Inari why, and even went so far as to make her and Inari swear not to tell anyone from Konoha that the blonde Junin had recently visited them, but the entire village. Tsunami hoped she could get some answers from Sakura, but she knew she had to be careful. "It's been a long time since I've seen you. What's been going on in your life?" Sakura didn't want to talk about herself, but she knew Tsunami was a nice person and it would be impolite not to respond. "There's not much to say, Tsunami-san. I've just been living the life of a shinobi, with the highlight of my career being when I became an apprentice to the legendary Sannin and current Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves, Senju Tsunade." Tsunami exclaimed before asking, "Tsunade-sama of Konoha, my, that is very impressive. What else has been going on in your life?" "Well, I got engaged," Sakura replied absently, before wishing she could undo what she had just said. "Engaged? That's fantastic, Sakura. I knew you and Naruto would get together because I remember how much he adored you when I first met you too, and to be honest, I thought you and Naruto made the cutest couple even back then. Sakura's face fell when she heard Tsunami's remark, and she stammered before speaking up. No, it wasn't Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun and I had been together for a long time, but I broke up with him to be with Sasuke-kun. Oh, the Uchiha. I'll admit I've never liked him as much as Naruto, but I'm sure you and he will be very happy together. No, we won't. We both ended our engagement a while ago, Sakura replied, her voice tinged with sadness. I apologize. I didn't mean to bring up any negative memories for you. No, it's okay. It was a mutual breakup on both of our parts, but talking about it still hurts right now. I understand if you don't want to talk about it. Let's switch topics. How is Naruto-kun these days? Tsunami noticed Sakura wince slightly as she prepared to respond when Inari opened the front door and entered the house, but both women could hear shouting from outside before the boy closed the door behind him and walked into the living room where his mother asked. What's going on, Inari? Who's all that yelling outside? Kiba-san is arguing with this pretty young lady who arrived with 3 dogs and said she was his sister Hana. Anyway, Hana gave Kiba-san a piece of paper to read, and when he did, he started yelling at her about how their mother can't do this to him and why he should leave Naruto-sama alone. Sakura jumped up and pressed her ear against the front door to hear what was being said. I don't care what Okasan says, Hana. I'm not leaving Konoha without my wife. Don't you realize she's no longer your wife? Okasan and Hiyashi-san have annulled your marriage to Hinata. But they won't be able to do that. They can and did. As of right now, both you and Hinata are divorced. I'm sorry, Kiba-kun, I know it must hurt, but what's done is done, Hana said as she knelt to check on Akamaru's condition. Kiba stood enraged as he watched his older sister check on his canine partner, before growling menacingly. Grr. I don't give a damn what Okasan and Hiyashi have done. The two of them can go to hell. I'm bringing my wife home and there is nothing they can do about it. I didn't agree to this divorce and neither did Hinata. Hana looked up in surprise at what Kiba had just said, then stood back up and stated harshly. What, you don't think Hinata will agree? Is it because of Naruto? Kiba scoffed. Not because of your friend, I say. He's not one of my friends. Whether you want to admit it or not, he is. He had nothing to do with the problems in your marriage with Hinata, and you know it. Well, if he isn't the source of my marital problems, what is? You're Kiba. You have no idea what the hell you're talking about, bitch. The female Inuzuka took a step forward and was practically nose to nose with Kiba, growling with fear. Grr. If you ever speak to me like that again, I'll put you down, because that is exactly what I'm talking about, Kiba. Your attitude and the way you treated Hinata during your marriage was shameful to the clan. You treated Hinata like a possession or a trophy more than as a wife. It was like you thought her only purpose in life was to serve your needs no matter what they were. To be honest, the way you spoke and acted towards Hinata infuriated many members of the Hinata knows about that. Kiba exclaimed, a worried expression on her face. The entire clan is aware of, as well as the outcomes of some of those liaisons. Do I know for certain that Hinata is aware? No, I do not. However, she is neither stupid nor a fool and has never been, so chances are, little brother, she is aware of all of your escapades. Perhaps if the little Hyuga bitch had put out more, I wouldn't have had to go looking for it elsewhere. Kiba thought bitterly to himself before hearing his sister's voice again. You should thank Kami that you were never physically abusive to Hinata, because Okasan and I would have beaten you up. And if we didn't, I know a few others in the clan who would have. Hinata is a good woman Kiba, and she was well liked within the clan because she could see what you couldn't. That she was a gentle, kind, and decent person deserving of the respect you never showed her during your marriage. That marriage is now over, little brother. Accept it. But, if you truly care about Hinata, as you claim, at least do the decent and honorable thing and let her go. That much you owe her. Kiba stood silently and glared at his older sister before taking a step back and declaring defiantly. No, I'm not giving her up. She's mine and mine alone, and I'm not giving her up to Naruto. Have you not heard anything I've said? This has nothing to do with Naruto. Hana yelled back, frustrated. I don't care what you or anyone else thinks or says. Naruto is to blame for everything, and I'm going to get Hinata back. We'll find Akamaru as soon as she's recovered, and that's all there is to it. I'm done debating this with you. If you want to go after your ex-wife, I won't stop you, but Akamaru will not accompany you. The venom from that snakebite was extremely toxic, and he still requires anti-venom in at least 2 weeks to recover. I'll be returning him to Konoha to get him the treatment he requires. But I need Akamaru's assistance in tracking down Hinata. I'm sorry, little brother, but Akamaru would be dead in a week if he tried to accompany you. I only need a week. I'm not going to let you take him. Hana's 3 wolf huskies positioned themselves between Kiba and Akamaru with a snap of her fingers. Kiba turned to face his sister as he heard her say, "It's not up for debate. Akamaru will be returning to the village with me to heal. The mere fact that you are willing to risk his life in your obsession to reclaim Hinata sickens me. If you want to go after her, fine. But I'll be damned if I let you kill Akamaru in the process." With that said, Hana made some hand seals in a shadow clone before loading Akamaru into a horse-drawn wagon. Hana called out to the house as she was about to leave. By the way, thank you Sakura for the medical assistance you gave to Akamaru. If you hadn't, I wouldn't have had the time to save him now. Our clan owes you a debt, which I will now repay. I won't tell Hokage that I found you, but you should consider returning to Konoha with me, as Lady Tsunade is quite cross with you right now. Sakura opened the front door and took a hesitant step out onto the porch before bowing and responding to the Inuzuka female. You're welcome about Akamaru Hana-san, and thank you for not saying anything to Lady Tsunade, but I must decline your invitation to return with you. I must, no need, find Naruto-kun as soon as I can. I can and I do Sakura-san. Take care of yourself and Kiba-kun, and please come home soon. You both have people back in the village who care and miss you, Hana said with a wave of her hand as the wagon lurched forward and began its journey back to Konoha. Tsunade stood on the balcony of her office, watching the villagers prepare for the Kyuubi festival, which would take place in a few days on October 10th. Her rage at the festival had been building all week, as she had heard nothing but gleeful comments from people about how relieved they were that the demon had vanished. When Naruto returned the Uchiha traitor, the villagers lauded him as a hero. But, over the last 5 years, the same prejudices and hatred that Naruto had faced for the majority of his life had slowly crept back into the minds and hearts of the people. This enraged Tsunade to no end, and she wondered silently how the villagers would react if they knew the true heritage of the person they were so happy to be without. I'll have an answer for you in a couple of days. And I can't wait to see the looks on all of these kooky people's faces when they find out who Naruto is. Tsunade thought to herself before a knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Enter. Shizune opened the door to allow Councilman Danzo and the 2 council advisors to the position of Hokage elders Kaharu and Homura to enter. Tsunade motioned for them to take a seat and asked Shizune to bring her and her guests some tea. Danzo grumbled angrily to Tsunade while they waited for Shizune to return. I didn't come here to drink tea and exchange pleasantries, Tsunade. You said you needed to discuss something important with us. What is it? First and foremost, Danzo, you will address me as Hokage-sama or Lady Tsunade now and in the future, because if you don't, you will no longer require a cane because a wheelchair will be your permanent mode of transportation. Do I make myself clear? Tsunade replied, a hint of malevolence ringing in her voice. Yes, Hokage-sama, I understand, Danzo said, his teeth clenched. Shizune then returned, carrying a tray with a kettle and cups on it. Danzo looked around the room with caution as everyone watched Shizune pour cups of tea for everyone before distributing them. Danzo had long since learned not to be the first to drink or eat from something his people had not prepared. Seeing Tsunade, Kaharu, and Homura drink without incident, the old Warhawk councilman assumed everything was fine and took a sip of tea before asking. How come you've addressed the three of us here as Hokage-sama? Yes, let us discuss that right now. Shizune, please excuse us, and before you leave, activate the silencing seals around my office, as the subject we're about to discuss is not for everyone's ears. Shizune replied, as you wish, Lady Tsunade, before making a series of hand gestures to activate the seals and locking the door behind her. Now, the subject I'd like to discuss is Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade stated before taking another sip of tea. Yes, I'm glad you brought this up. We also want to discuss the Jinchuriki with you, Hokage-sama. I, as well as Kaharu and Homura, believe we made a mistake in supporting the recommendation that the boy become the next Hokage after you. We, like the people of the village, were merely caught up in the euphoria of Sasuke Uchiha's return when that recommendation was first proposed. Tsunade countered, I see then that this meeting was quite fortuitous. For you see, I summoned the three of you because I, too, intend to present some proposals to the Konoha Council for a vote in a couple of days, and I chose this date to coincide with the anniversary of the Yondaime's sacrifice, as I'm sure you did as well, Danzo-san. Of course, Hokage-sama, Danzo snidely replied as he finished his tea. Well, let me tell you the proposals I intend to introduce. First, I'm downgrading Naruto to B-class missing nin status with a simple capture order for him. Second, I intend to honor Minato by revealing to the village at the start of the Kyuubi festival Naruto's true heritage of being his son. I must also tell you that Naruto will not be replaced as my chosen successor by the Uchiha brat either. Ha, 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 you can expect their support all you want, Hokage-sama, but you won't get it or mine, and I can assure you that your proposals have no chance of passing, not if I have anything to say about it. Danzo mockingly exclaimed. You won't be able to say anything about it. Who is Hokage-sama? The blonde Hokage's eyes shone with an almost evil glint. Because you'll be dead. In about a minute. What are you talking about, Suna? Arg? Danzo asked, clutching his chest in pain and gasping for air. Wait, what's going on? Oh, you're having a heart attack, Danzo, Tsunade replied calmly, taking another sip of tea and watching the councilman collapse to the floor in pain. But how? I know the tea wasn't poisoned, and I saw you drink first, Danzo said, his teeth clenched. You're right, the tea wasn't poisoned. It merely served as a catalyst for the poison, the blonde Kage said calmly. You see, I'm not known as the Queen of Elixirs for nothing. Several years ago, I was able to develop a clear, odorless, and tasteless poisonous paste that perfectly simulates death by cardiac arrest. So it was a simple matter for me to lightly coat the bottom of your teacup with the paste and then wait for the tea to metabolize it and carry into your system. You see, I'm not known as the Queen of Elixirs for nothing. You bitch Tsunade. You'll never get away with this. Danzo screamed angrily. Tsunade stood up and walked over to Danzo, then smirked and smiled as he looked down at the old Warhawk councilman writhing on the floor. "I already have, my dear Danzo." Danzo stopped moving and stared lifelessly up at the ceiling a fraction of a second later. Shizune then entered the room and announced, "Lady Tsunade, something terrible has happened." As Councilman Danzo was leaving the building, he appears to have had a heart attack. Several of our Anbu witnessed his collapse and attempted to resuscitate him, but I'm afraid they were unsuccessful. "I'm sorry, Lady Tsunade, but Councilman Danzo is dead." "That is very unfortunate news. Konoha has suffered the tragic loss of one of our most prominent political leaders today. I must discuss this tragedy with my advisors Kaharu and Homura and how it will affect Konoha in the future. Please leave us Shizune and take the tea with you as you go." "Oh, and would you send someone in here to empty my trash?" Shizune politely replied before signaling behind her, and an Anbu operative appeared and entered the office before picking up and carrying Danzo's body away in front of the stunned and terrified Hokage advisors. Tsunade returned to her seat as Shizune closed the door behind her. The blonde Hokage was about to say something when she was interrupted by Kaharu stammering. "Now look here, Hokage-sama, how dare you?" "Shut up, you senile old bitch, or there might be another tragic loss of a prominent political leader today. Believe me, I was truly tempted to get rid of all three of you corrupt and decrepit old fossils on this day, but fortunately for you two, I decided otherwise. I know the two of you have gotten rich over the years off of Danzo's bribes, but the payday for your support of his measures in the council ends now." Kaharu and Homura exchanged glances before returning to see their Hokage's resilient and determined expression. When they noticed Tsunade's hardened gaze, both advisors bowed their heads and meekly replied in unison. "Hokage-sama, yes." "Good, because I'm telling you two right now that the Konoha Council will once again be a decent, noble, and self-sacrificing body of leadership for this village, as it was in the days of the Nidaime, and I will remove any obstacles in my way of achieving that goal," she said dismissively, waving her hand. "You two may go now, but never forget what I said to you on this day." "Hokage-sama, yes." Tsunade stood there watching her two advisors leave her office. She took a bottle of sake from her desk drawer and poured herself a drink before raising the cup and declaring, "I promise you, Naruto-kun, that if you ever return to the village and take my place as Rokudame, you will not be plagued with the corrupt and deceitful administrations that Sensei, your father, or I were. This village will become the utopia that my grandfather, the Shodai, always dreamed it could be, and there is no one better than you to lead this place into that golden era." Tsunade slammed the drink down her throat and sighed as she gazed out the window at the setting sun. Sasuke jumped from tree to tree, closely followed by his traveling companion Ino, heading in the direction where they had felt the chakra explosion a few days before. However, the Uchiha was concerned about actually finding Naruto and what he was supposed to do. Lady Tsunade's 2-week grace period for finding and returning his friend had long since expired. If he followed his orders, if he couldn't persuade Naruto to return to the village, Sasuke would be forced to eliminate him as an A-ranked missing nin. This thought did not sit well with Sasuke. A snapping branch behind Sasuke jolted him out of his reverie, and he looked back to see Ino doing her best to keep up with him. The sight of the blonde Kunoichi prompted new thoughts for Sasuke to consider. Sasuke knew that his partnership with Ino was only temporary, and that it would most likely end once they found Naruto. The Yamanaka heiress had already demonstrated that her motivations for tracking down Naruto were vastly different from his. So when they found Naruto, he was forced to fight him if the Dobi did not return. Sasuke realized he'd probably be fighting Ino alongside Hinata if she hadn't already found Naruto. As he considered that unpleasant scenario, Sasuke could feel the onset of a headache. It would be bad enough if he tried to fight Naruto alone. Not to mention fighting two highly skilled kunoichi alongside him. This mission had turned out to be far more difficult than Sasuke had anticipated. The Uchiha youth had no desire to fight anyone and could only hope that Naruto would reconsider and return to the village with him. He was confident that if Naruto refused and forced Sasuke's hand, he could defeat Naruto and the others because of the ace up his sleeve. He had obtained the Zanpakuto Zabumaru from Lord Byakuya Kuchiki of the Kuchiki clan. Naruto and the others would be powerless in the face of such a weapon. However, Sasuke was certain that if Ino and Hinata fell from the blade, they would stay down. Unfortunately, Sasuke wasn't as certain that Naruto would stay down, as his friend's stubbornness could be overwhelming at times. And if Naruto refused to stay down, it brought Sasuke back to the question that had been mercilessly plaguing his mind since Lady Tsunade had given him 2 weeks to find and return Naruto. Could he really murder his only friend? Talk to Yoruichi and make whatever preparations you need to Shunsui to do this, but first, we'll talk to Kenpachi about the logistics of doing this, because I don't want to take all the men and leave the encampment unprotected and vulnerable to attack while they're gone. As you wish, Shunsui said politely before departing to find the Neko woman. As Naruto watched Shunsui walk away, he reflected on the upcoming battle against the Akatsuki and Shunsui's suggestion to help get his small army ready for that battle, and he felt renewed hope and confidence. Perhaps we'll have a chance to win this fight after all. Before pulling out the scroll given to him by Yamamoto, Naruto reflected on his conversation with Shunsui the day before. It was as good a time as any to examine it. As he opened it, it was old and worn, but it still held together somehow. Naruto's jaw dropped, and a small smirk spread across his face, as a glimmer, just a tiny flicker of hope could now be seen, because the contents of this scroll and the information contained within had given him an idea. The scroll contained instructions on how to reach the final stage of Bankai. The second release is said to grant the wielder a power boost of 10 or more if he survives. Naruto's sly grin spread across his face as he closed the scroll and walked purposefully into the camp. Naruto made his way to the farthest tent across the clearing where the bandits had set up camp. When he arrived, he listened carefully for any sounds and even announced his presence to ensure the occupant was aware he was entering. But when he walked in, his face went blank. Oh, for Kami's sake. Yugito stood before him, her back turned, seemingly unaware of his presence, despite the fact that he'd been quite vocal about his arrival. However, he had forgotten about it because she had let her long, silken gold hair out of the braided ponytail she usually wore. Her headband lay beside her on the sleeping bag, allowing her long locks of hair to fall down to her bare back, her soft brown eyes half open, and a small half-smile on her face. She was absolutely radiant in that moment of vulnerability. On a deeper level, it was similar to the night they walked together. She'd retained some semblance of caution up to that point, but right now, she was completely topless. Yugito, he said, but she didn't hear him and sat down on a nearby cot to rummage through some of her personal belongings, which consisted of a small knapsack. That is, the few items she was carrying when they met. The first significant item she pulled out was a small tattered photograph of herself as a younger woman with another young man. The boy had light brown hair, dark blue eyes, and a puzzled expression on his face. Yugito had apparently leaned up on her tiptoes and kissed him on the cheek at the time of the photograph. Who's that? He found himself asking, despite the fact that he knew it wasn't any of his. She didn't answer, instead continuing to look at the photo, and a small sigh escaped her lips. Sighing, he dared to walk up behind her and tap her on the shoulder, knowing the consequences would be at the very least a shallow wound. Needless to say, her response was predictable. Yugito stiffened, jumped to her feet, and reached for her kunai holster, a kunai already drawn and twirling in her fingers. Naruto, on the other hand, would have none of it and pinned her in the only way he could at the time, grabbing her in an embrace. Yugito. He growled in her ear, and she seemed to notice. "What are you trying to accomplish, Naruto?" she asked, turning her head to see him, then turning beet red less than a second later as she realized who it was. "Hey. What are you doing in here? I didn't hear you walk in. Perhaps you should give up the kunai?" She shook herself free and reached for her ears, startled. The blonde pulled a wad of cotton from each ear, the obvious cause of her deafness, with a slight popping sound. "Damn earplugs, this is what I get for attempting to nap." The Nibby vessel realized she was still topless at this point, and with a small squeak of surprise, she grabbed the first thing she could, her tattered flannel jacket. Allowing the twin glorious mounds of ripe flesh to bounce slightly as they were released from her arms only made her more embarrassed. "Damn it, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you enter." Naruto finally turned away when he realized he was staring. "Yugito, I need your assistance with something." He'd barely finished his sentence when he spoke again. "I need you to train alongside me." "Huh?" She hurriedly put on the shirt, trying to hide her burning pink blush. "Wha?" Why was he asking this of her all of a sudden? It's not that she wasn't eager to fulfill his request. It's just. This was so damn unexpected. "I'm serious," he said, looking down at Zangetsu, the prone steel strapped to his back in cloth. "I need to reach the second level of Bankai, and with Kenpachi and the others away from training, you're the only one strong enough to help me." Now he looked at her with those unrivaled sapphire orbs. "Please, you're the only one I can count on." Yugito's cheeks were flushed. Well. After an intense sparring session with Yugito that morning to help him unlock the final release or Bankai of his Zanpakuto, Naruto returned to camp a few days later. Naruto was about to sit down for a nice lunch with Hinata when he jerked his head around and stared intently into the forest a few miles away. He began to unravel Zangetsu from its cloth sheath, grumbling angrily. "What exactly is it, Naruto-kun?" "Hinata-chan, some uninvited and unwanted guests from our former homeland have arrived." Hinata became concerned when she heard this, fearing that Anbu hunter Nins had arrived to take her and Naruto back to Konoha. The blonde Jinchuriki noticed the Hyuga woman's worried expression and responded confidently. "Don't worry, my Haim. If they're Anbu, I'll deal with them, and no one will force us to return to Konoha, I swear." Sasuke and Ino were a little nervous as they hid in the treetops. It had taken them several days to finally locate Naruto's encampment. They were trying to figure out how to approach Naruto when the subject of their conversation suddenly appeared in a field 100 feet in front of them and yelled out. "Either you show yourselves or you leave immediately and never return." Both Sasuke and Ino were surprised that Naruto had detected them from such a distance, as they had been keeping their chakra levels low in order to avoid detection. Ino nodded to Sasuke, who had agreed to let the Yamanaka girls speak with Naruto first before acting. The Uchiha kept his gaze fixed on Ino as he leapt from the tree and landed in front of his old teammate. "Anbu." Naruto spit with disgust as he watched the masked ninja approach slowly while removing her mask. When it was revealed who the Anbu was, Naruto's face turned cold, and he snarled. "What do you desire, Ino-san?" As she thought to herself, Ino winced and tears welled up in her eyes at Naruto's icy glare and curt tone of voice when he addressed her. "I'm no longer Ino. I'm Ino-san," as if he doesn't even know who I am. Hi Naruto-ku. "Naruto. I'm here to talk to you and see if you'd come back to the village with me." She immediately realized her error, his frown hardening into a firm line. "Well, I don't want to talk to you, and I'm not going back to Konoha, so take your friend and go." "Please, Naruto, just listen to me. There are many people back in the Leaf Village who miss you and want you to return, including Tsunade-sama, Shizune-chan, and Iruka-sensei. A lot of people love you and want you back in their lives, including me, Naruto-kun. When she said that, Naruto glared angrily at the blonde kunoichi and spat with resentment. I remember hearing that lie from you before Yamanaka. 2.5 years ago. A bouquet of red roses was thrust into his arms, and he did a double take when he saw the 3 words written on the card. You're kidding me, Naruto stammered, his voice hesitant. I'm not Naruto-kun, I love you. Naruto's face became ashen as he tried to process what Ino had just said. After a few minutes of deafening silence, Ino couldn't take it any longer and pleaded. Please, Naruto-kun, say something. Naruto hesitantly stammered over to the lovely blonde kunoichi. I don't know what to say, Ino. I've had 2 other people say that to me, and both times it crushed my heart. You've been a good friend to me since the wedding. He shook his head to shake the memory away. I don't think I could have made it through these last few months without you. I admit I've grown close to you, even fond of you. He took a step back, realizing how close he had gotten. But, no matter how much I want to, I don't want to jeopardize our friendship by seeking something more. Ino's eyes welled up with tears. However, why Naruto-kun? As she continued, her lower lip trembled. I want us to be more than friends, and it sounds like you do as well. Because, Ino, I'm afraid that if I let myself love you, something bad will happen to us? Before responding, he shook his head rapidly, as if to drive away a negative thought. I don't think I can take that much pain any longer, Ino. Please understand that you are afraid of loving someone because of what has happened to you in the past. Naruto stepped back as Ino approached. But please give me the opportunity to prove to you that I can be the one you can love and that I can love you back, as I already do. Naruto asked softly, looking deep into Ino's eyes. Are you serious, Ino-chan? Do you truly love me? I meant every word, Naruto-kun, and I promise I'll never hurt you, she said softly before closing the gap and kissing him on the lips. Flashback concludes. Of course, I quickly learned what your words and promises actually meant. Naruto snarled at the blonde Anbu who stood in front of him in that field. A couple of years ago. As she approached a lake of dark blue water with shimmers of moonlight reflecting off it, Ino's heart was pounding in her chest. She waited nervously for her boyfriend of 6 months to arrive at the lake they both adored. It had become a special place for the blonde-haired couple, as Ino recalled many walks along its shore with Naruto in the past. Ino wiped a tear from her cheek and despised what she was about to do. The Yamanaka heiress, on the other hand, had made her decision and could only hope that Naruto would forgive her. As if on cue, a blonde teen emerged from the shadows of the surrounding trees and approached the young woman. Hey Ino-chan, Naruto said cheerfully as he approached the blonde kunoichi, his hands behind his back. Hey, Naruto-kun, Ino said, her heart racing even faster at his sight. This is for you, Naruto said as he handed the girl a red rose. Thank you, Naruto. It's lovely. When Ino saw the flower, tears welled up in her eyes, and she took it slowly from his hands, not wanting to damage it, when she heard Naruto say. Not as lovely as you. As Naruto bent down on one knee in front of Ino, her breath caught in her throat as she stared into his magnificent cerulean eyes. Ino-chan, Naruto said softly. Why, yes, she replied nervously, fearful of what was about to happen. Would you do me the honor of being your husband? Naruto asked lovingly as he drew from behind his back and opened a small velvet box containing an engagement ring. The proposal landed like a ton of bricks on the blonde female. Ah, Naru, Ino stuttered, her eyes quickly filling with tears that streamed down her cheeks. Naruto stood up, took her hand in his, and affirmed confidently. I love you, Ino-chan. I'm sorry I couldn't say those words to you 6 months ago when you said them to me. I was too scared and wrapped up in the pain of what had happened with Hinata. But you asked me to give you a chance, and I'm so glad I did. Being with you has saved me from the pain and despair I thought would never go away. I know this seems sudden, but you were right, Ino-chan, you are the one. Naruto then leaned in and pressed his soft lips against hers. Ino found it difficult to resist. She liked how his lips felt when they touched hers, how it lit a fire in her soul. But she couldn't. She couldn't, no matter how much she wanted to. Naruto, Ino coughed in a choked voice, breaking off the kiss. I'm not in love with you anymore. She exclaimed, tears streaming down her cheeks. Naruto stared at her, rigid and motionless, the hurt in his voice clear as he found the words. What do you mean you no longer love me? You told me you loved me. Did I do something, Ino-chan? Please tell me what it is so I can fix it. You didn't do anything. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, Naruto-kun. I still love you as a friend, but nothing more. Why, Ino-chan? Please explain. I'm in love with another person. Ino exclaimed, more to persuade herself than the now broken boy standing before her. Shikamaru stepped out from the shadows of the trees and walked over to the weeping Kunoichi, while Naruto looked back and forth between his friend, who couldn't look him in the eyes, and his now blonde ex-girlfriend before reaching down and placing her hand in the Nara boy's hand. Ino was taken aback when Naruto did this, and she looked up and gasped in shock at the blank expression Naruto now bore on his face, the same blank expression she had seen when he had opened that hospital door to Sasuke's room years before. Then, when Naruto dropped the engagement ring onto the ground, the pain and guilt of what she had just done made the blonde Kunoichi feel sick. I swear I'll never hurt you. Ino returned her gaze to Naruto and noticed a brief flash of the pained betrayal she had just inflicted upon him flash through his eyes before walking away into the night in silence, leaving Ino to ponder the consequences of what she had just done to him and what it meant to her own life every single day for the next 2 years.
Flashback concludes.
You want to know something funny, Yamanaka? I used to think a red rose was one of the most beautiful things Kami had ever created. But I can't stand looking at one since that night. Because I realized that if you are enraptured by its beauty, you will never notice the thorns that will cause you pain. Ino stood before Naruto, tears streaming down her cheeks, before saying in a tearful voice. I know I've hurt you before, Naruto-kun, and I know you must despise me. But I swear to you, when I say I love you, I'm not lying. I only ever told you a lie 2 years ago when I said I didn't. I was given a choice back then, and I made the wrong one, and I've hated myself ever since. That is why I am here. I adore you, Naruto-kun, and all I want to do is bring you home and be with you. I'm not sure if you still want me, and I don't blame you if you don't. And even if you don't love me as much as I love you, Naruto-kun, I still want to be a part of your life. Please return to the Leaf Village, if not for me, then for the people who still love you and are waiting for you to return. Damn it, I'm not listening to this nonsense any longer. If there are people back in the village who love me and want me to return, it's only because they haven't had their chance to tear me apart like everyone else who claims to love me has. Naruto retorted angrily, still hurting from the memories that surfaced when he saw and heard Ino again, before leaping away from the weeping Kunoichi. I can give you a good reason to return, Dobi, because if you don't, I'll have to kill you, Sasuke said, appearing 50 yards in front of the blonde male, holding something that surprised Naruto. Is that a Zanpakuto? Where did he? The Uchiha then swung his Zanpakuto in a sweeping arc towards Naruto and shouted out with determination, interrupting Naruto's thought. Jutsu Kan Raiko. Blaze of Lightning Jutsu, Blaze of Lightning Jutsu. A second later, a wave arc of blue light erupted from the blade's tip and ripped forward. Oh, you're serious? Naruto chuckled before scowling as his own Zanpakuto appeared in his hands and he swung Zangetsu towards his longtime rival, effortlessly deflecting the electrical attack back at the Uchiha. Sasuke's eyes widened in awe at the sight of Naruto's own Zanpakuto, so much so that the last Uchiha barely had time to knock his own attack away from himself before stumbling and collapsing to the ground in a heap. As Sasuke rose from the dirt, he looked up, dumbfounded, to see a smug Naruto waiting towards him while sarcastically asking. Did you think you were the only one who had one of these? Impressive, Sasuke said with a small smile, adding. I was going to ask you where you got it, but I recognize your blade now. Doesn't it bring back memories? Naruto grinned as he lifted the massive cleaver. So, Teme, what's the matter? Is that all you've got? Only Sasuke could shake his head. That was the most powerful Raiden Jutsu attack I've ever developed, and you swatted it away like it was nothing, he sighed, waving his hand away from the smoke. However, Byakuya-sensei told me that attack wouldn't work against another Zanpakuto, so I had to give it a shot. He stated that only Kido-based attacks, not Jutsu attacks, would work on another Zanpakuto, so I didn't want to use this, but you've given me no choice, Dobi. What are you talking about, Teme? Just this, the Uchiha replied, running his index finger along the edge of the blade. Roar Zabumaru. Suddenly, Sasuke's Zanpakuto was transformed into a segmented blade with a pick-like protrusion on each segment, and the Uchiha swung his newly altered blade in an arc above his head, and Naruto noticed the sword seemed to elongate due to the stretchable threads giving it the pliability of a whip. Naruto couldn't help but be impressed by the incredible length Sasuke's blade. An imposing Zanpakuto, Teme, I don't recognize it, so I'll ask where you got it, unlike you. This blade belonged to Byakuya Lieutenant Sensei's Renji Aburai, Sasuke explained with a small frown, repeating what the man had told him at the start of his journey. He died in the Arrancar Wars, and Byakuya-sensei thought I was worthy to wield it in his place. Well, Teme, the Jinchuriki said, reaching up to the clasp that held his cloak in place and removing the symbol, allowing it to unfurl. It'll take more than a sharp-edged whip to defeat me. You Dobi, you have no chance of beating me now. My Zanpakuto is unrivaled, I swear. Simply return to the village. Naruto snickered quietly, then threw back his head and laughed. Sorry, Teme, but you said your sword was unbeatable, didn't you? Naruto sneered as he began channeling power into his blade as the ground beneath him cratered, forming a small ditch where he stood. Since that's obviously Shikai, let's put your Shikai up against mine. Naruto then motioned Zangetsu forward, one arm on his sword, the other holding the Zanpakuto straight and true, before boldly shouting. Alright, Zangetsu. Getsuga Tenchi. No way. Sasuke exclaimed in surprise, whipping Zabumaru towards the crescent-shaped wave of spirit particles released from Naruto's blade's edge, which was now streaking directly at him. When both attacks collided, the resulting force blew Naruto and Sasuke apart, and as both former teammates skidded to a halt on the ground, Sasuke activated his Sharingan out of sheer frustration, the three tomes forming all at once while he screamed. What the hell was that? Naruto's response to Uchiha's question was an ominous deathly silence, as he swung the massive blade once more toward Sasuke. Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he realized this was not the same Naruto he once knew, and that the former hyperactive boy had matured into a hardened man who was taking this fight seriously. Getsuga. Naruto snarled as energy surged along his blade, Tenchi. The blue crescent of energy arced forward from point-blank range, pushing the Uchiha backwards as he was forced to hold a block against the powerful attack. With a simple flick of his wrist, however, the Anbu slashed the fang of energy in half, leaving him no time to use the long-range strategy he'd hoped for. As Naruto launched a flurry of strikes, Sasuke dodged and parried perfectly, his movements appearing effortless in comparison to his opponent's attacks. Naruto suddenly jabbed forward with his Zanpakuto, the silvery black tip of Zangetsu aiming directly for Sasuke's chest. The Uchiha leapt directly backwards and quickly swung Zabumaru to counter Naruto, who fell back and away. He lunged at Sasuke once more with a growl, but he stepped back at the last second, thrust his hand forward, one finger pointing mere centimeters from the blonde's chest, and declared, "Byakurai. Pale lightning, pale lightning." What? Naruto cried out, but it was too late as a concentrated powerful lightning bolt slammed into him with the full force of a Chidori, powering him into the ground where he lay for a moment before staggering to his feet with nothing but singed clothing. "Is that it? You're a moron." Sasuke yelled at him as Zabumaru reverted to sword form and screamed in frustration. "I'll do it. If we keep going, I'll have to kill you." As red chakra began to flow out of the seal, Naruto shook his head slowly. "Do what you have to Teme, but know this, I ain't going back. Not right now, not ever." As Naruto spoke, his eyes narrowed and changed color, becoming a deep shade of crimson, as his irises straightened into horizontal slits, before the red chakra streaming from him formed a Jinchuriki cloak that swallowed him up. "Moron." Sasuke continued to stare at him as the shroud rose to a single tail and then stopped. "Are you truly insane?" Sasuke inquired before disappearing in a flash of leaves, which Naruto imitated moments later. Sasuke had thought himself prepared for his assault, but when it arrived, he realized how foolish he had been to remain in one place for so long with his sword still extended. He hadn't anticipated such a breakneck pace. Naruto Uzumaki stepped forward, his body blocking Uchiha's, his eyes gleaming coldly, an ominous expression on his face, and swung his Zanpakuto, a Getsuga rocketing out from the tip of his sword and swallowing his Nakama within the azure energy. The blast picked up Sasuke, launching him into the air as his mind processed what had just happened. A shadow fell over him, and he had enough sense to look up, at the sound of whirling chakra. With a roar, Naruto came down, driving his fist into Uchiha's abdomen. As Sasuke marched towards the blonde Jinchuriki, the armor chestplate he wore under his Anbu uniform was in tatters, and Zabumaru lashed out in response, slitting the blonde's cheek before propelled himself away. Sasuke used Shunpo, Flash Step, to force Naruto down, pinning him to the ground as the terrain splintered, cracked, and broke under the Uchiha's relentless attack. Tenchi Getsuga. He snickered in amusement as he picked himself out of the debris as the energy fang struck full on, removing him from the wedged earth and roughly depositing him into another tree. "Nice attack," groaned the Uchiha, nursing his dislocated arm and clumsily grasping the hilt of his sword. Sasuke was able to catch a direct line into his blonde opponent's eyes as his own eyes widened, morphed, and began to spin, indicating the casting of a Sharingan technique. "Tsukuyomi!" Naruto cried out in agony, dropping Zangetsu to claw at his head as everything turned red, and in the hellish depths of his mind, his worst nightmares resurfaced, ready to haunt and torment him once more. But with the pain came rage, which irritated the Kyuubi, who slowly began to stir, awakening for the first time in weeks. Bah! What an irritating jutsu! With a little effort, the great fox demon pumped some of its chakra into his host's chakra pathways, which shook him and startled his mind out of the illusion. "There. Just murder him already." Kyuubi grumbled irritably. As the spots cleared from his vision, something caught his attention. Sasuke had gotten behind him, and Zabumaru was still coursing through the air, ready to split him in half. Tenchi Getsuga. Naruto yelled again, swinging his sword quickly and then bringing it back around to guard. Sasuke took the hit, and Zabumaru barreled into Naruto, the synergy of their attacks causing another explosion. The two combatants were thrown off balance and staggered back, coughing from the smoke. Sasuke thrust a hand forward, clearly preparing another Byakurai spell, while Naruto rushed forward with another Getsuga already prepared, determined not to be decked again. A scream pierced the air as both warriors launched themselves forward and unleashed their attacks. Stop. The two opponents' gazes were wrenched away from each other, Sasuke to his left, Naruto to his right, suddenly aware of Ino, running towards them both, and if she kept running, she'd be right in the middle of the blast zone. To their horror, both men realized they couldn't stop their attacks because they had already passed the point of no return. And now Ino would pay the ultimate price.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.